I should bring my chair up a little bit. All right. Is this live? I think so. All right, everyone. This is my first stream. First live stream. Thank you for coming in and joining my channel, Wake Up America. Today we're gonna talk about something that's been a growing concern on my mind. Basically the death of the First Amendment. We definitely live in pretty turbulent times right now, and there's a lot going on in the world today. In fact, it's almost impossible to keep up with everything going on. So thank you guys all for tuning in. If you like the channel, please make sure you show your support, like, and subscribe. I do apologize in advance if there's a little bit of background noise. I have some people working on my house upstairs, and I'm raising some chickies here in the back. So anyway, yeah. So there, like I said, there's with the new administration, we have a president that doesn't seem to, want to tolerate anybody that doesn't tote his party line. And he's not the first president to be hostile towards journalists and media. Nixon was, notorious for being aggressive against the media, but he's actually taken it a huge step further. So I don't know if a lot of you guys are actually aware, but during Trump's first term, he wasn't very effective. He wasn't effective at all. A lot of the stuff that he tried to push through just died in the waves. But a lot of the reason that Trump wasn't very, very successful during his first term was just due to the fact that he didn't have the support of his party, and nobody actually thought that he was going to win in the first place. They didn't have any roadblocks set up to help guide him along the path. And this time around, things are a lot different. They actually created a program called the 2025 Roadmap. And this was designed to eliminate a lot of the barriers that Trump faced during his first administration. And in this roadmap, they also were creating something called Schedule F. Now, Schedule F isn't completely related to this topic because this is mostly about the First Amendment and the freedom of speech and the freedom of religion. And the Schedule F was basically designed to de-insulate government employees from being pressured by political parties. And it basically what it in a sense, like from my understanding of it, is it took away the protections that are afforded federal employees to protect them against not toting the party line. Like I said earlier, if you don't tote the party line, they can fire you. And a lot of people, when I was talking to my friends and whatnot before the elections actually came around, they're like, oh no, this can never happen. This can never happen. Well, look how many federal employees have been fired just, in the first 100 days of office. I think we're looking at like 100,000, 200,000 federal employees just lost their jobs, and that's just a start. And a lot of these administrations were obviously very left-leaning. And, the president claims that, he leans more left, but in the political climate, he has no choice but to go Republican. And in some ways I can agree with that. I've often found myself leaning more along the lines of the right than the left. But at the same time, I understand too that, a lot of change needs to happen in this country. There's a lot of things that I don't agree with. Like, I don't agree that the, federal government has any business telling, a woman whether or not she can have an abortion or not. That may be something that should be talked about, but it should be talked about at a state or a local level. It should not ever be talked about at a federal level. What can be taught in schools? Again, not necessarily something that should directly be federally regulated unless federal funding was going to that school. If federal funding is going to that project, then yeah, maybe they should get a little bit of say. But if you want to have a school and teach Christianity, fine, that, go for it, whatever you want to do. If you want to have a school and teach the Quran, then fine, go for it. Do whatever you got to do. If you want to have a school and teach atheism, go for it. Again, whatever you want to do. Like, I'm not here to judge. I just don't really think the federal government should be telling us what we can and can't do. But there's a lot of things that have been happening in the first 100 days of office that really, really, really have me worried. Trump has always said that he's very, very engaged and supportive towards the middle class individual. Well, in the first 100 days of office, he scrapped a lot of programs that helped a lot of middle and lower class income people. The USA program, yes, I agree that there was probably some pretty faulty transactions going on in there, but not everything the USA program was doing was bad. A lot of it, created subsidies for farmers to buy food and provide it to food banks and things like that. With the scrapping of the USA program, that's gone right now. So when all those people living in these big cities can't go to the food banks and get food anymore, and they can't afford food because food stamps don't cover it or their food programs got cut off, and they go there to get food and there's no food. I've said this so many times, desperate times create desperate people. Desperate people are very unpredictable and they're very dangerous. So, people better start stocking up and being prepared for, some pretty tough times ahead. Especially when people can't afford to feed their families anymore. That's gonna be the real tipping and turning point. But we're not necessarily quite there yet, but we're getting there pretty fast. Like, things aren't looking good. CEO of Walmart came out the other day and said they can't keep everything stocked, and some stuff they're not even going to bother to stock because they don't believe it'll sell at the prices that they'd have to sell it for. They're not going to be able to absorb all the tariffs. It's just not going to happen. Shipyards have already reported a decrease in shipping containers, and the shipping containers and the ships that do make it to port, those containers are only like half full compared to what their usual allotment is. That tells you right there that we're in trouble. We're in big trouble. He also said that the United States has 3 weeks worth of inventory remaining. If that inventory is gone, that's gonna create problems. But where we're really, really gonna have the problem is when the government takes away our ability to freely, express our ideas and concerns, like what I'm doing here right now. This is not something that I can tell you will be allowed in here. If somebody's on here saying things that do not support the party line, they could be in trouble. This could be the last time you ever hear from me. I don't know. But, I fear that we're moving towards a world just like that. And it's not because I agree or disagree with everything Trump's doing. But one thing that I do disagree with that Trump is doing is he's alienating the press. He's taking selected members of the press, allowing them into the press briefings, and those people are asking, scripted and targeted questions that would make him look favorable among the administration. And that's not a free press. Anybody should be able to allow questions and, express concern and ideas. And I get it, the left and the right, they're so far apart, it's like a magnet, pushing against each other, positive and negative. But I mean, the idea behind it is that if we don't have a freedom of the press, then we don't have anybody to hold the government accountable. If they do something that is, just completely backwash or wrong, there's nobody in there to challenge them and be like, hey, what's going on here? Why did this happen? Why did we just bomb Gaza? Why did we join Israel and not Iraq? There's like, why allow Israel to have nuclear weapons but not Iraq? And there's so many different questions that, the press should be able to be there to ask and challenge the judgment of the administration and the officials that we put in the office. If there's nobody there to do that, we're in a lot of trouble. That basically means that our government can act with, impunity and do whatever the hell it wants and give no disregard to public opinion and, pleasing the constituents in which they were elected to serve. And if we get to a point to where we can no longer share and express ideas like I'm doing here right now with you, fine folk, if we're not allowed to do this anymore and that chain is cut off, The government now has complete control over the minds and hearts of all of Americans. There will be no outside influence to those, not on a national scale or on a global scale, even at that. The best you could do is talk to your friends and neighbors, but you're only able to create a localized response at that point. If our government goes off the hinges and starts doing something crazy like bombing Europe or something like that, we might not even know about it. We count on a free press to be able to give and express those ideas to us. And if that is gone, that is the death of democracy. That is the final nail in the coffin. And we need to be very, very mindful and how this administration moves forward and the level of accountability that we place on our elected officials. Now, there was another really, really big thing that happened recently with the switch of the new administration. The FEC chair that they elected is far right leaning and has committed to supporting Trump's agenda. Now, the problem with that is our government institutions are supposed to be secular from the public or from the current administration in. They're not supposed to be directly, tied to their agenda. They're not supposed to be pushing their agenda. The FEC is designed as an agency to protect the free and communication of Americans. And they're supposed to make sure that our communication lines are open, the First Amendment is protected, and they're not here to tote Trump's agenda or party line. But the new chair of the FCC that has come in has already pledged to do whatever he needs to do to support whatever agenda the White House is pushing right now. And what can you do at that point? Now, if you have the FCC going after people that are actively speaking out against what the president is doing, and they're targeting them with lawsuits, and they're targeting them with injunctions, or they're trying to shut their outlets down, then we got a really, really, really big problem. There's no other way to sell it to you. We're in trouble. If we can no longer freely express the ideas, then we now live in a dictatorship. We no longer live in a democracy. Democracy begins with the free exchange of ideas. And without that, all you have is tyranny. So I just wanted to, take some time here and break down what is kind of going on. If Trump only lets far right leaning outlets into the White House, then there's nobody there to ask the right questions. They're only there to ask questions that make whatever agenda the Trump administration is currently pushing look favorable to the American people. And that's basically not only blindsiding the American people, but it's also shutting out the free exchange of ideas. And I could care less if I watched a clip earlier of a journalist asking the president, if God, what is his name? Kennedy Jr. or whatever is eating less Big Macs now. That is not something that she should be there asking. That's it's not. It doesn't make sense. That's not the question that should have been asked. If they only get to ask 10 questions, they should be asking questions like, why are you shutting down Section 8 housing? Why are you targeting the poor instead of targeting the war on drugs? Why are you targeting the poor instead of targeting the prison industrial complex? Why are those taxpayers still paying for people to be incarcerated for crimes of marijuana possession when marijuana has practically been legalized by almost every state in the United States? I mean, there's nobody there to ask the right questions and hold this administration accountable and to a higher American standard. And with there's nobody there to do that, then we're basically just rolling over and playing dead at this point, because they're going to be able to do whatever the hell they want to do, and nobody's going to be the wiser. Nobody's going to be able to challenge them. Nobody is going to be able to, impeach them or bring them to court or, make them stand trial. And I'm not saying that they've done anything to stand trial, but I'm just saying that with the lack of freedom of speech, then you've cut off the flow of information, and you made it one-sided and biased and politically motivated. And that's not what free speech is supposed to be about. It you know it, there's a reason it's the First Amendment in the Constitution, because it is undoubtedly the most important one. Yes, I agree that the right to bear arms is important. There's so many different components in the Constitution, but this is at the top of the list. Anyway, that's all I got for now. Just wanted to kind of take a minute and rant with you guys, and hopefully, if you guys appreciated the message, if you have any questions or you want to chat about something, put it in the chat. Like and subscribe if you can. It's a brand new channel. I don't have a big following yet, but hopefully we get bigger as we go. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Have a wonderful day.